You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison for yet another packed show. You'll all know by now that England have named their squad for the Ashes, with Will Jacks the surprise inclusion, and Harry Brook, as we speculated last week, promoted to vice-captain. We'll reflect on that and hear from Managing Director of England Men's Cricket, Rob Key. We'll also discuss the white ball squads named for the Tour of New Zealand, with Zach Crawley earning a maiden T20 call-up and Sam Curran and Liam Dawson getting a chance in the 50-over side. England opener Tammy Beaumont will preview the start of the Women's World Cup this week. We'll also look back at a frantic final round of the County Championship, and we'll bring you the final word. So plenty to come over the next hour. This is Following On. Well, Harmy, we'll hear from Rob Key on the promotion of Harry Brook to vice-captain in just a moment. But I'd like to get your opinion, first of all.
It was brutal, wasn't it? It was brutal. It was typical Keysy. Didn't chuck any questions. I thought it was a very good press conference when it comes to him explaining the decisions. I'd hope he had spoke to individuals that he was talking about. I'm sure he did. I think he said Brendan had spoke to Ollie. I think he said Ben had then spoke to Ollie, and I think Rob had spoke to Ollie as well. So, they've made the decision by speaking to the individual. I think what people have got to realise as well is Ollie Pope was given the vice-captaincy when Harry Brook wasn't even in the team. I spoke last week about what I felt Ollie Pope's value was to the group, which was probably to be a very good vice-captain and not be put in charge. So can you have a vice-captain that doesn't become captain when the captain gets injured and you bring somebody in over his head? It probably doesn't work like that. So I've got no problem with Harry Brook being the vice-captain. I really don't. I don't see this as much as I think there was a question asked, which I think it was probably right. What's going to change between now and 21st of November? Really, from Bethel or Pope. And I think that, I'm not saying England were going to sort of tell us who was going to bat at number 3, and is Jacob Bethel going to bat there above Ollie Pope? But look, it looks and it seems that Ollie Pope is now going to be out of the side. It looks and it seems that Ollie Pope is going to be England's backup wicketkeeper, and backup batter. It looks as though Jacob Bethel is going to bat at number 3 in the first Test match at Perth. He gives them a little bit of calmness when he goes out to bat over the frantic Ollie Pope when he starts. Ollie Pope averages 40 back to number 3 in the Bazball era, in the problem position. And that, for me, is why I think we've sometimes got to be careful when we start throwing names around to say Jacob Bethel has got a bat at number 3. This kid is supremely talented, but he's got one adult 100. He's got one adult 100. That's it. Ollie Pope has gone to Hyderabad in the first Test match of an Indian series away from home and got 190. This boy might not look as calm and cool and collective when he's out there, when he first goes out there. But when he gets in and scores hundreds, he goes in and gets big hundreds, especially early on in Test series. So as much as I like Bethel, I think sometimes you've got to be careful when we're making big calls like this. The big call is Harry Brook is vice-captain. I've got no problem with that because he's the heir apparent. He will captain England when Ben Stokes is done, possibly next year, the year after, all depending on Ben's body. But I think by making this call, listening to Rob, and reading between the lines, it looks like Ollie Pope is in that 16-man squad as England's backup wicketkeeper batter.
Okay, let's hear from brutal Rob Key on the matter.
I think now's the right time. It's just pretty simple, really. We think he's the best person for the job. He's had more experience now in leadership. I think that Harry Brook deserves it, really, for the way that he's done it. And there's no really other ulterior motives. There's not like an elaborate scheme that, if we take the vice-captaincy off Ollie Pope, it makes him easier to drop. It doesn't matter really if you're vice-captain or not, like if we don't feel you're the right person, wherever you're batting, whether that's an opener, a number 5, wherever, we'll end up bringing in someone that we think can do the job better. So at the moment, Ollie Pope's the man in possession. I think he felt that was coming. And vice-captaincy, it's sometimes I think it's not always the most important decision that you've got to make at times. We could have gone down the road of not having a vice-captain. But when Popey's done it well. He's fitted into so many different roles that we've asked him to do over the last few years and done them all well. But Harry Brook's just, I think, the better leader, and will be the better leader going forward as well. So that's why he gets that job.
A lot of the mantra under Ben and Brendan has been about making you feel 10 foot tall. So how easy would it be to lift Ollie Pope up after what he might see as a setback, losing the vice-captaincy?
As I say, we've all spoken to Ollie Pope, and I don't think I don't think being the vice captain of England was something that was really high on Ollie Pope's agenda. When he got the job, probably 2 or 3 years ago, when it was at a time when Harry Brook wasn't in the setup, the team was very much, we're trying to develop the batting unit. We had some of the older, more senior players in the likes of Broad, Anderson, Joe Root had done it before. So Ollie Pope was one of the guys that took the reins on from there, really. But as time has gone, it's emerged that Harry Brook's the leader in the group, really, or one of the leaders. The fact is now, I think we've got a lot of people that are decent leaders in that group, to different degrees, and the way they do it, the example they set, Harry Brook's the one that, is the best of that group.
And there's been a lot of talk about Australia and their top order. You obviously toured there 20 odd years ago as an Ashes series. Are you just as excited to be part of the England group this time around ahead of this Ashes?
I think you almost just can't wait for it to happen, really. It's this lull before. I think this is going to be one of the best series for a long, long time. And, look, it's going to be really tough, but I'm so excited to see what's going to happen.
That's England's managing director of men's cricket, Rob Key, discussing the position of vice-captain. Let's talk about Will Jacks. Initially, I think I wasn't alone in thinking that was an absolute bolter, totally unexpected, but really interesting listening to the justification and the plans and, the research, the analysis, the changing nature of Australian pitches, the less likelihood that a spinner at all the venues anyway, maybe Adelaide and Brisbane might fall into this category, possibly even Perth, where a spinner won't bowl that much. Nathan Lyon has bowled fewer and fewer overs in test matches as the years have gone by, over the last 3 or 4 years anyway. He obviously, we know his batting quality. He's a better spinner than the number of overs bowls he has bowled suggests. He's bowled very, very little, but let's not forget he does spin it. He is 6'1", as we mentioned last week, and he's a very fine batsman. And he took 6 wickets on his Test debut, albeit in helpful conditions in Pakistan. And so from being a real shock, there was a very good piece by Simon Wilde in the Sunday Times as well, in which he analysed the reasons behind Will Jacks' selection. He's also an option to balance the side if and when, I was about to say, Ben Stokes is unavailable for one test match. So it all seems to make a lot more sense than it did initially. Am I on the right line?
No, 100% agree. I didn't see this one. I must admit, I was so focused on Chris Woakes and Rian Ahmed being England's plan B if anything happened to Ben, because I think as much as you don't want to see it, and as much as, by all accounts and reports, Ben's been training with Durham and he looks in really, really good form and really good fettle. He looked amazing before that India series, and he got an injury because he was bowling. Now, I think that's a message, I think, to Ben and to the group, that they have, with a squad, they have to get the bowling formula right. They have to get the bowling combinations right. We can't have Ben Stokes bowling a session. We can't have Ben Stokes being our best bowler in the Test series again, because we know if he does, it's 3.5 Test matches, and we potentially lose him for the back end. That's not something we can afford to do. But if that does happen, I didn't see the Will Jacks. I just seen the Rian Ahmed Chris Woakes combination. The Will Jacks makes so much sense. It really does. Now I see it. It does make so much sense. I'd play four seamers in Perth. I'd play four seamers in Brisbane. And then there's no real need for the spinner. And if you play four seamers, I've always been reluctant when you've got an all-rounder. Yeah, we would never play four seamers with Andrew Flintoff. But I think at this point, I think England's bowling vulnerabilities, Ben's body, I think it's probably better off that we do play four seamers, that we do take a little bit of pressure off Ben bowling as much as he needs to bowl, and have four frontline seam options, as opposed to, well, if one of the seamers, like we've had in the last couple of years, the last couple of series, gets whacked, then the spinner doesn't hold an end up and give us control. Then all of a sudden Stokes has got a bowl for a long period of time, but he can't do it. So for me, I'd play four seam options, but it also gives you the option that later on in the series, that if you are on top and you do potentially need a little bit of spin, that you could lengthen, especially if you're winning, you could lengthen your batting unit by having Will Jacks at number 8. Have him as your frontline spin bowler when you possibly need a little bit. You don't need a great deal, and then you're in control by getting 400, 450. And when England do that, they get it quickly. So I think the Jacks one looks as though it makes a lot of sense. And for me, it's sort of ticking a box and a feather in the cap for the team that put all this together. The research behind these selections, it's not, and I've seen it close hand because I went through the process from a selection interview point of view, that the amount of knowledge that they have, the amount of information that they're given, the amount of information that's out there to pick a side, to pick a group, to pick for, horses for courses, as the old saying would say, on certain surfaces. Rob Key, Brendan McCullum, they haven't just picked Will Jacks, who haven't played a first-class game since 2022, out of a hat and thought, all right, we've got our 11, we'll just take anybody. These are calculated selections on information given from, what the pitches are going to be like in Australia, what skill sets are needed to do well in these surfaces. So they're not just throwing names around because they think, he's a nice tourist. Back in the day, Paul Collingwood. This is proper selection, and for me, I'm happy with that 16-man squad. There are going to be lions out there, and I think Will Jacks is a very, very bold selection. It's a very good selection, and if worst case happens, Ben Stokes gets injured after 3 test matches, we have a plan B, where the plan B that I thought they were going to have, which was Woakes and Ahmed, that was a wrong balance of a side. This, for me, is as probably close as we'll get, because we probably need somebody that bats stronger than he bowls, and that, I think, that's a very, very good selection in Will Jacks.
And just another point. Touring finger spinners in Australia over the last decade have averaged around 60 per wicket. So what do? The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again. So, do you say, right, we're looking for our off spinner to take lots of wickets? No, that doesn't happen in Australia. It doesn't happen for anybody. So accept that, and the bonus is that he might well bowl you some tidy overs. He is 6'1". He might get some bounce. You need bounce more than spin in Australia. But the reality is that touring finger spinners average 60 over the last decade. So, and also he did mention that Rian Ahmed will be in the Lions squad. So if they want to change tack, he's there.
Yeah, and I think he's there. Possibly, Sydney's changed a little bit. Back in my day, you took 2 spinners on tour. You took a 17-man tour. You took a young bowler, 2 spin bowlers, a couple of wicket keepers, and your second spin bowler, had a nice holder for sort of 6 weeks and went and played at Sydney, and that's it. And if you've got a finger spinner that averages 60, so what? If he averages 60, but if he averages 35 with a bat, that could win you the series. So that could win you. That could be the difference between winning and losing a series. Your spin bowler might average 60 with a ball, but if he averages 30, between 30 and 40 with the bat, lengthens your tail, gives your bowlers more of a rest because you're batting for that little bit longer, then that might just be the difference. So, I mean, Australia, you listen to the noises coming out of Australia. They're talking about playing four seamers in quite a few venues. They're talking about Boland playing instead of Lyon. Now, Nathan Lyon's got over 400 Test match wickets. They're not going to
500.
500 Test match wickets. He's not going to play at home. That's the crazy thing. So when we're looking at our spin bowling option and we're talking about Shoaib Bashir and is he good enough, and he hasn't got a county, and he's been carrying drinks for Archie Vaughan and Jack Leach. I mean, a guy that's got 500 Test match wickets for an international cricket nation. They're even talking about Nathan Lyon not even playing some of the Test matches at home. Tells you what spin's like over there. So this is what a point I made a long time ago, right at the very start of this monologue. You have to get your combinations right. And it's important that England have got a group of fast bowlers and an all-rounder who is in top form with the ball, even with a little bit of an injury, after Ben Stokes bowled in India. If you get the combination of bowlers right for each and every individual game that you play in the Ashes, you stand a great chance. And I think that's probably England's biggest challenge.
Talk about the various selections for the T20 squad and the ODI squad. Ironically enough, after you said last week that Sam Curran wasn't in your 50-over squad, he has now been included in the 50-over squad. But the way that he's been reintegrated into the England team, it just confirms, Harmy, that his non-selection would appear to have had very little to do with his ability and more to do with his attitude. And if he's now decided that he is going to make an effort to fit in, then England want him in both squads.
Yeah, and that was it. It was always about his attitude. It was never been about his ability. My assessment of his 50-over ability to fit into this group, which was, is he a number 7? The thing for me is Sam in T20 cricket bats for that little bit longer in the middle period when he bats at number 4, number 5. But batting at number 7, you could be in for 20 overs. Does it suit Sam Curran? He has he has an unbelievable ability to affect games at crucial stages. But sometimes going in too early, you have to find a different way of utilising not only your skill sets, but the game plan of the longer format of the white ball game. So that was my only thing with Andy's bowling in 50-over cricket when you've got to bowl 10. I think that's a little bit of a game changer as well. So that's why I just had him in my T20 team and I didn't have him in my 50-over team. But I think England, that looks a good squad. It looks a good squad going to New Zealand. You look at the bowlers. Archer's going to keep his workloads up leading into a Test series. I think the way that the ODI squads, I've just been to Portugal with, and 8 other former England cricketers. 2 or 3 are still in and around the game. I'm not going to name their names, and people will do the research and find out. But there were when that squad was announced, when we were away, there was one person that they both said to me, "What on earth is Joe Root doing there?" Because leading into the Ashes, do we need Joe Root playing in this 50-over competition? 3 matches in New Zealand, and I must admit, my eyebrows were raised. But knowing Joe the way we all do, he plays a lot of cricket. He likes to play in the 100. He likes to play for Yorkshire. And I just wonder if Joe Root's decided that the best, I wonder if Joe Root's a bit more old school and thinks he needs a little bit more preparation than the Brendan McCullum, Rob Key regime needs going into a series where Joe thinks, you know what, 3 lots of 50 overs out in the middle in Southern Hemisphere conditions might be better than me just in the nets leading into an Ashes series. So it might be one of the senior players telling the current regime, I think our preparation needs a little bit more cricket. So, but he was the biggest one. I was like, what on earth is Joe Root doing there? Smith's going to play. yeah, I get that. Yeah, Duckett, Brook, Archer needs to up his loads. I can't see him bowling 3 lots of 10, but I can see him bowling 20 overs and across, a 10-day period. And Bethel needs to sort of keep going with, they're the ones, the key components that are in this 50-over squad that's in the test squad. So it looks a good squad. I'm really looking forward to commentating on it. I've always great cricket coming out of New Zealand. And Sam has to nail this, getting into the 50-over team. Sam has to nail his position, whether it's number 7 or number 8. And he's got to be able to fulfill his obligations of bowling 10 overs. On his attitude, I think that's the only thing that was keeping him out of the team. And that's, I don't mind saying that. I think that's the only thing that was keeping out of his team, because Sam Curran's ability, I don't think it was ever in question. I just think it was where England fitted in the franchise mentality of where these freelance players play. I think possibly has been a change. Hopefully, it's been a change in Sam Curran. That's why he's in there.
Okay, I want to ask you about Harry Brook in just a moment, but I need to ask you, how much consultation is there with senior players, Harmy, about their participation in certain tours and certain games? I mean, like, to me, it would make common sense, really, for Rob Key or whoever makes the final decision to say to Joe Root, how do you feel? I mean, he's Joe Root. How do you feel about going to New Zealand? Does that sort of fit in? Would you like to? I mean, he might well have said, "I'd really like to be in that squad." It's probably not for me to say, but maybe he loves Mount Maunganui. I can't remember where they're playing now. I think it's. Do you know what I mean? I mean, did that ever happen to you? Like at the end of your career, did anyone ever say to you, "How are you feeling? How's the body? I'd like to pick you, but I'm not." If you think a rest would be more beneficial, how much consultation is there? Do you think Joe was asked?
I think he would have been asked. I think he would have been asked, and I think Joe missed the thing with Joe. I think Joe missed a lot of white ball cricket when he wasn't captain. When he was captain, and I think after the winning the 2019 World Cup, I think Joe missed a lot of white ball cricket, and I think Joe just likes playing cricket. I really do. I just think he loves being in the dressing room, loves playing cricket. The continuity of batting, the run he is on is ridiculous in all formats of the game. And sometimes, it might look as though, why on earth is he going to New Zealand, a month before the Ashes? But in Joe's eyes, it's business as usual. It's 50-over cricket. It's a game that I love playing. I'm a world champion at. And I'm on a roll. So I would imagine Rob Key would have had a little chat with Joe Root about his timeline of getting into the Ashes in preparation. And I'm sure Joe said, no, I want to go. I want to play. It did happen back in the day. It did. I remember going to Sri Lanka. I got injured in 2007, and you were going to Sri Lanka. I think I was out from July. The next test match was November. And it was like, what am I going to do till then? Because I'm not going to be fit until the end of September. English cricket season's finished. And the conversation with Otis Gibson, we need to go and play some cricket. And it was, right, what do we do? Got in touch with Neil McKenzie, our great friend, and I came over to South Africa and played for 4.5, 5 weeks. So, there is a consultation. The player has to take ownership. And, I'm sure Joe Root, if he didn't want to be he didn't think it was the right preparation for the big Ashes series to be in New Zealand, I'm sure the great man wouldn't have gone. So I think it's a two-way conversation, and a sensible solution comes out. Joe Root probably just enjoys being around this group, helping Harry Brook, and enjoys playing 50-over cricket.
Okay, then it was interesting that Ben Duckett, Jamie Smith and Jofra Archer are all being given a rest. I keep looking at Harry Brook. I know that he was given a very short rest. He missed the 3 games, or 2 as it turned out, against Ireland. But I look at his workload. So he's got 6 white ball games, presumably he plays them all in New Zealand because he's the captain. Then the Ashes, then the shoehorned in 3 ODIs in Sri Lanka, and then the T20 World Cup. I mean, he hasn't got time, never mind a rest, he hasn't got time to take a breath. How are they going to manage his workload? And he's now Test vice captain.
Yeah, I think I think this is important, this New Zealand series. I don't think the Sri Lanka series is probably as important. I think this one is still Harry Brook inserting himself on the group, his ideas, his philosophies, them getting used to him. Because you've got to remember, I mean, he's a very emotional character, is Harry Brook. He's somebody who lives on the edge. He's not quite naturally saying throwing his toys around, but he is a very emotional person, out in the middle, in interview and as captain. So I think he needs to keep learning from a leadership point of view. I still think he needs to keep learning from a combinations point of view, especially in the shorter white ball format, because of what's coming up on the horizon with the World Cups. So I think it's important that he still stamps his authority on his team, knowing what he wants in the power players, how he wants his depth, his execution of skills, all that stuff, standing from wherever he stands, his vantage point is. So I think from a captaincy point of view, that's important. As much as the Sri Lanka trip is closer to the World Cup, I don't think that is as important after the Ashes. I think that would be his break time. I think I would be sending not a development squad to the Sri Lanka series, but that short tour. I think I'd be looking as that's where I'm giving my big players that played in the Ashes a little bit of a rest going into the World Cup. So I would imagine that's where Brook will get his break then. But I think this one it's an important trip for a hell of a lot of reasons. It's an important trip for the Ashes boys to get some time in the middle in Southern Hemisphere conditions, seeing how the ball goes through the air and the movement and everything that goes with that. The bowlers to get miles in their legs going into that, and also, still building towards, going to a World Cup with a new captain and coach.
And a reminder, you'll be able to hear live and exclusive commentary of that white ball tour of New Zealand on talkSPORT 2, the first T20 getting underway on the 18th of October. Right, it's time to talk World Cup. We're joined live, as promised, at the top of the show by England opener Tammy Beaumont. Tammy, thanks so much for your time, live from Bengaluru. I know that, I don't know where to start. Warm-up games. Let's talk warm-up games. They never mean anything if you lose them. But when you win them, and especially when you thrash India and Australia, the two tournament favourites, suddenly they do take on a bit of significance, don't they?
Yeah, I guess that's always the nice way to look at things. Yeah, we certainly kind of played in a way that we wanted to focus on our processes, but also focus on how to get wins. I think World Cup cricket is very much about getting over the line, and starting well in the two warm-up games has been crucial to that. And obviously South Africa coming this week is going to be another tough test. So yeah, we're ready and raring to go.
I mean, you've gone through a transition, a couple of changes of coaches in the last sort of few years throughout your time. You've been in a team for quite a while now. Going into, leaving England, should I say, what was the mentality of where your team was at and realistic chances in this 50-over World Cup? And like manager just said, after them two victories in the warm-up games, do you reassess? Do you think, right, we've got more of a chance of going on and winning this tournament?
I think for us, we've never really focused on what the expectation is. I think why limit yourself or why put something too far out there? I think for us, it was about getting our group together, getting us moving, getting us playing in the way that we want to play our 50-over cricket, and seeing that as a process and taking it step by step. And so far, so good. And obviously, there's always an expectation on any England team in any World Cup. So, for us, we're certainly looking to get as far ahead in the tournament as we can. But yeah, for us, it's all been about getting the team together, get everyone, playing the way we want to play, knowing how to go. And so far, it's going pretty well. And we're looking forward to the starting, really.
So much talk about spin, and sometimes it can be overplayed in the subcontinent. I mean, Bengaluru traditionally doesn't spin wildly, does it? But Sarah Glenn was brilliant yesterday, and you do have at least 4 frontline spin options. Are those girls front and centre? Do they know that this could be their moment?
I think so. I think obviously coming to India, you always want to have extra spinners in the squad, and I think for us, we know we've got two of the best in the world that really put revs on the ball and can spin it on surfaces that offer that with Charlie Dean and Sophie Exton, and like you said, Sarah Glenn as well has really worked on trying to get that lateral spin. So I think we're in a really good place having so many options. I think Lindsay Smith can bowl through so many different phases. We've got Alice Capsey and Emma Lamb also able to offer some overs. So if the pitches offer any spin, we've definitely got the armoury to throw at anyone. And it's kind of great to have so many options, I guess, for Charlotte and Nat.
And Tammy, you're when you go into sort of major tournaments, world tournaments, your big players have to stand up. Your experienced players like yourself have to sort of stand up. What a start for Nat Skipper-Brunch. She is one of the best players in the world. And yes, when we talk about warm-up games, but to go and to get a big 100 in a warm-up game, that must be satisfying for the squad, and also sort of uplifting the squad, knowing that your experienced players are in top form.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she batted beautifully as she does, and she really leads from the front in how she goes about her batting, particularly when we talk about playing spin. I think she's one of the best in the world at it, and really kind of sets the standard of how we have to follow. And I think looking at the rest of the batting performances in the last two games, I think for me seeing Emma Lamb back up to 50s and Alice Capsey carry her bat yesterday in a tough conditions, being 30 for 3. I think for me it shows that it's yes, it's important that the senior players stand up, those that have got many caps, but actually the players we've got in and around that middle order are really coming into their own and thriving out here in these conditions and showing what they can do. So hopefully they continue their form as well.
Bookmakers don't always get it right, Tammy, but they've got India marginal favourites ahead of Australia at the moment. I think India are currently about 3-1, Australia 4-1, South Africa and England about 6-1, New Zealand 8 or 10-1, with Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Bangladesh outsiders. Is that have they got it right?
Well, yeah, I don't tend to pay much attention to betting things, but I think this is the best chance India have ever had to win a World Cup in the last kind of few years. On home soil, we know how fanatical the Indian fans are and how loud it's going to be when we have to take them on. I also think they're playing really good cricket. They did lose the series against Australia just a week ago, but they did really push them hard and won one of those games. And I think they are a team that if they play well, they can take on anyone. So yeah, I can understand that one. And I guess we'll have to wait and see if they can handle that expectation, because that's a pretty big thing as the home team to have to handle.
Tammy, you talked about what India need to do to play well. What have your team got to do? What have England got to do to play well, get to the latter stages, and potentially go on to win the World Cup? What's the challenges that lie ahead, and what do you see that if we nail these certain things, then we have a great chance?
I think for me, it's getting contributions from the whole squad. I think you can't win a World Cup on one or two players standing out. I think we've really got such talent and depth in our spin department, which is obviously going to be great for us. And we're always looking for the likes of Sophie Exton to whirl away at one end, and Nat Skipper-Brunch in the middle order. But I think for me, it's going to take a whole team effort. And once we get on a roll and hopefully get some momentum, and I think in a way the schedule for us, the slightly bigger teams are maybe at the back end for us, so we can really kind of gain some momentum throughout and hopefully play some good cricket, but then kind of face your India, Australia and New Zealand right at the end of the group stages. Hopefully by then we'll have really good momentum, really good contributions throughout.
I'm glad you mentioned the schedule. I wanted to ask you about that. I think that it's the most brutal one for any 50 over World Cup ever devised at under 19 level, any level, men's, women's. You've got 7 games in 23 days. The attrition level on the players, I don't know. I mean, I can't help feeling that the depth of squads is going to be tested, and actually also player rotation. You're going to have to use all 15, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's 4 venues as well. So it's an absolute moving kind of carnival at times with the amount of bags and everything like that. I think in a way we're quite fortunate that we have 2 games at each venue before moving, so you can almost take a few things out your suitcase and not completely live out of a bag. But no, I think it is. I think India is also a very tough place to tour. I'm sort of, Steve's probably got a few stories of, you know, how sometimes illness can take people down. So, you know, you might have a set 11 that you want to play, but at some point you're going to have to adapt, you're going to have to change, and everyone is going to have to be ready, and everyone's going to have to be ready to contribute.
Yeah, it's a tour. India, the likes of India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, it's always a tour. And I think Manners has toured India 17 times. So he's experienced enough as well. But it's a tour that brings teams together, Tammy. For me, is that if you are, like you say, you get on a roll and you get some momentum, because on tours like that, you spend a hell of a lot of time together, more than you would in Australia or South Africa, because you can get out, you can spread around. But on these tours, you have to stick together, and it's important that, you know, as a group, that you do stick together and you do gain momentum. And, you know, how's this group gone with that? Because you've been given a little bit of a new lease of life with a new coach in Charlotte Edwards. How's Charlotte gone with the group, and where are you in the sort of the timeline of where you're looking to get to?
Yeah, Charlotte's been great to come in. I think she's got a real infectious energy about her, and you know, I've known her a very, very long time. Obviously played with her and under her at the beginning of my career, and I think for me is, you know, she's the same Charlotte, the same values, the same winning mentality, that ruthless nature. I think is really starting to transfer across into our performances, but also that care and respect for the players and the environment, I think is really important. And she's certainly bringing that across in her coaching. And yeah, I think, you know, she's trying to make sure it's as fun as possible. And any little funny moments that end up on the live stream get clipped up and shown in meetings. So there's certainly a lot of laughs and things like that. So yeah, she's going great.
On a personal level, Tammy, 2017, the glory year, player of the tournament, the leading run scorer, England winning the World Cup. You were 25 or 26 then. It's 8 years later. You're 34. You're the senior player. People look up to you now as a leader. Does it feel like 8 years ago, or does it feel like last year?
Well, I'm 5'2", so no one looks up to me. But I think in a way, yeah, I guess it probably does feel like quite a long time ago. I think the women's game has changed irrecognisably almost since then. And yeah, I feel a real privilege to still be here, still be a part of it, and going into kind of my 4th 50 over World Cup and hoping to try and replicate some of that magic from 2017. But yeah, I think in a way it's kind of nice for some of us that were there in 2017 to be staring down another 50 over World Cup and feeling in a really good place, ready to go.
And Tammy, just finally for me, obviously there was a lot of talk about, you mentioned that 2017 World Cup, a lot of talk about your players who've come and gone and stuff like that. Kate Cross, somebody who you know well, you've played a lot of cricket with, she's not there. Have you spoke to Kate? The void that needs to be filled, the experienced player is not going to be there. You know, she's going to be missed probably more off the field than sort of on the field, but it's a big character not to have.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you really feel for someone in that situation. It's never easy. You know, I've myself been dropped from T20 World Cups over the last few years, and obviously the news about her contract's also really not ideal timing, and you really feel for someone. I think in sport at times is really cruel, and you never really get that fairy tale that you're after. And I've certainly stopped dreaming of a fairy tale, because you just know that very few people get them unless you're named Stuart Broad, probably. But yeah, I certainly feel for her, and she is a big miss. She's, you know, been the leader of the bowling attack for quite a long time, and it's not just kind of the overs she bowled, but you know, how she goes about her game and the conversation she has. But I think in a way, you know, the likes of Lauren Bell has played a lot of cricket now and is starting to really get into that role. And we've got a new bowling coach in Chris Liddell, who's come in with really great ideas to try and fill that void. But yeah, it's never nice to see one of your mates kind of missing out.
You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. Don't forget the latest episode of Following On County Cricketer is out now. As talkSPORT's cricket editor John Norman is joined by Harmy and the Cricketer magazine's George Dobell and Nick Friend to look back at the final round of the county championship. So you can get your full county championship fix by listening to that. But we'll sum up some of the highlights and lowlights. I'm afraid Durham are the greatest lowlight, Harmy. What an absolutely dramatic final day. Hampshire thought they were gone, thought they were down, and just I can't begin to explain it. I mean, Durham's collapse from well, they were 74 for 4 to 85 all out to lose by an innings to Yorkshire. I mean, I was under the impression they just had to hang around for a couple of hours because the weather forecast suggested that rain was on its way. They just had to, I don't know, keep their heads. Cool heads were required. And they'd have still been up. I mean, it just feels disastrous that Durham aren't a Division 2 team, and yet they are.
Unfortunately, the don't panic, Mr. Mannering was ringing round where I was. I must admit, in Portugal on over the weekend. I mean, some of the dismissals as well. I mean, really, it really put a sour taste. There's obviously the obvious fallout. You know, the three big names at the top, Bostock, North and Campbell, taking some criticism. I don't think you can. I think you can have criticism for the top because of the overall season hasn't been good enough. I don't think you can blame the coach in this one. I think you have to look at the players. I really do. I mean, Durham started day 4 by bowling at Yorkshire, still in the first innings. That's it. If you lose from there, knowing that all you need is a draw to stay up, then you deserve to get relegated. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. Durham started the day by bowling at Yorkshire in their first innings. And then by needing a draw, all they had to do was stay out the day. To get bowled out for 85, 74 for 4. I mean, you deserve to get relegated on just that front alone. And you're taking responsibility. And then when you break it down and you see the highlights again, you see some of the shots, you're thinking, wow, I mean, that was a total capitulation. And I think when members, which they will criticise and they're rightly to because they pay their money and they support the club, and you just remember where we've come from under Bostock and North, you know, Franklin before and Campbell now. You know, the club was in a bad state. They were in a really struggling state of affairs. And we've regrouped, we've recruited, you know, some good players. We've got some good young players coming through. And the members will complain that some good young local players have had to leave. But at the end of the day, the players need to take responsibility on this one for that game at Yorkshire alone. That 2006-7, I think, 2006 series, summer, when we had to go to Yorkshire to get a draw to stay up. We were 150 for 5 after Yorkshire. Darren Lehman's last first-class match, both got 300. Yorkshire got 600. Yes, they were on a little bit of a coaster because it was Buff's last game and they were enjoying themselves. Durham 150 for 5 in that game. Otis Gibson walked out, number 7, got 150. Benkenstein got 150. Durham stayed up. And I thought that was going to be the case when Ben Rain got 100. Thought the fighting spirit of 2006 was going to be there, and you know, and people would have been talking about it in the dressing room. And in 2007, we won our first trophy in the French Provident in professional cricket. We won a championship in 08, we won the championship in 09, we won the championship in 13. You know, so that's how important it is to stay in that first division and what it does for momentum for your club. And unfortunately, having bowled at Yorkshire in their first innings on the morning of day 4 and then getting beat probably deserves to get relegated. And that's harsh coming from somebody that played for the club for 18 years, who loves the club, who wants the club to be so successful. But when people are calling for Bostock, North and Campbell's head, I'm not. I think you've got 3 great guys there at the top of the club who have got the club at heart and they will bounce back. They will be hurting more than anybody else at this moment in time. So, you know, stick with it, and I think we'll be fine in the long run. We've got some good kids, we've got some good young players coming through the system, but unfortunately, we're going to have to bounce back from a brutal second division, because there's going to be some good teams in that second division trying to get into the first division, or trying to get in the top division for the restructure of what's coming. Well, if the ECB ever make a decision on what's coming the following year.
Just a word about Hampshire, by the way, who, as we know, lost the final of both men's white ball competitions and the final of the women's one-day cup. So to have been relegated as well, I think would have been undeserving.
Yeah.
They did lose by 20 runs to Surrey in a thrilling finish. But I don't think Durham or Hampshire are Division 2 teams, quite honestly. Don't know how they managed to get into a pickle fighting to avoid relegation, but one of them had to go down, and it wasn't Hampshire. So, as I said, you can get a full county roundup on the following on County Cricketer. Okay, just a couple of other news items before we move on to the final word, and I've actually got quite a bunch of final words. So just very quickly, PCA Chief Daryl Mitchell has refused to rule out the possibility of strike action after the counties voted not to change the structure of the domestic season and the championship. I have to say that the 6-6-6 format, where you played the same 5 other teams twice, made absolutely no sense to me. But anyway, he did say that he didn't want to go down that route. He didn't think the players wanted to go down that route, but he did say we are a union, and as such, if the membership vote to go on strike, then that's what we'll do. I mean, it's just been a complete schmozzle, Harmy. Honestly, I thought the alternatives were pretty bleak. The alternatives to the current structure. But what on earth were they doing debating it in the middle of the season? It just, I know you had a bit of a rant about it last week, so keep it short this week.
Yeah, I mean, I've took the time on the Durham one, this one, because I didn't really want to go too much into strike action. I mean, this is just drastic things, and I'm sure there's no chance of striking. But why are we talking about striking this great game of ours? Really? I mean, how much diluted do you want cricket to be? In 2005, we played 16 championship matches, 9 in the first division, 9 in the second division, and we had a very, very strong first-class system that we're building, and we are producing players to play cricket for England. We were arguably the best team in the world. Strauss's team in 10-11, we played 16 first-class matches. We all know the problem, and it's the 100, but we can't get rid of it, because it's creating the money that is hopefully saving the game, the landscape of the game in this country. But to talk about strike action, tell you what, if you turn around and say to the players, right, you've got 14 games pro rata, you're going to lose. You're going to lose two lots of money from if you're going to go down to 12 games or 10 games. Tell you what, if they're saying, oh well, that's the case, you're going to pay us more to play 16 games. I bet you they'd play more. If you said they're going to pay more, and I'm always on the player's side, and I am for recovery. I am to get the best format of the game, which is the 4-day format, to produce England players. But when you're talking about 14 matches and you're talking about striking because you want to go down to 12 because you don't want to play cricket, sorry. We talked about the biggest thing I'll say here is talking about players playing. Joe Root's going to New Zealand because he wants to play cricket to get him in the best position possible to play in an Ashes series. Bloke that's played 180 test matches, nearly 180 test matches, wants to play cricket. You've got a 43-year-old still wanting to play for Lancashire, who's got 700 first-class test match wickets because he loves and he wants to play cricket. And you've got 250 cricketers who have got no chance of playing for England, who want to play less cricket but get paid the same amount of money. I'm on the players' side, but for me, if strike action comes in, they've got it horribly wrong. I think I would rather play more than 14 matches, but I'm old school. We know the problem, the 100's problem. Find a solution that everything can be played at convenient times. Give the players the best chance of recovery to be the best players they possibly can in these 14 matches. but
Okay.
don't bring the game down by striking. Please don't,
Yeah.
because that's not what we need.
I can't see that happening. I really can't. Okay, just very quickly. R. Ashwin has signed for Sydney Thunder in the Big Bash in what has been described as the biggest signing in BBL history. He's 39. He's a great cricketer, but he's 39 years old. He's an off spinner, and he's only going to play 3 or 4 games anyway because he's been signed up to the ILT20. That is a commercial decision, not a cricketing decision. The BBL wants to get into the Indian market, and that's, I mean, and he's signed for like $100,000 as well. It's like the lowest base price ever registered in the BBL.
Get him in the blast. Get him in the blast. Why not? I mean, R. Ashwin, like Jimmy Henderson, will still great players find a way to be good in the format that they're going to. So I've got no issue with R. Ashwin doing that, and I'm sure he will perform. Why can't he come in the blast? I would have him in the blast.
Yeah.
I really would.
Just got to find 70 or 80,000.
Yeah. So he's going to Surrey in the blast if he wants to come. Come on, let's get our Ashwin.
Okay, it's time for the final word, and we've got a selection here. We've got to mention Nepal, Harmy. Their first win over a major test nation, although it was a very, very weakened West Indies team because their test players are just about to start a series against India. So anyway, Nepal beat the West Indies, in case you missed it, in a T20 in Sharjah. So big ups to them. Cricket is massive in Nepal, by the way. There's that. There's Hampshire. Hampshire's players bought their retiring coach, A.D. Birrell, a cow because he wants to go and live on his farm in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. So they bought him a cow. That's a nice touch. And before we move on to the heavy stuff, you can comment on those two and tell us a Dickie Bird story.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weakened West Indies side, but how many times have we lauded our emerging nations when they go and find like level 5, 2 teams playing each other, even when they're getting bowled out for 20. This great game is more than just 10 teams, and Nepal have just shown that. Our Goffey popped into Portugal. He's out there with the family. He's off to Nepal to commentate on, obviously, a T20 league, and he said it's magnificent out there. He said it's manic. He says it's like India, but it's just, it's so condensed. So to see them win, brilliant. And what a present for Eddie Birrell. Well, what a present that is. Yeah. You put him in the field, you put the cow in you put him in the field, and you sit there and you sort of say thanks to the Hampshire lads. And, to send a coach away who's been, I think, so influential to, especially the shortest format of the club, and give them a present that it's, who buys watches now, and, who gives, it's a proper present. That it really is a proper present. And Dickie, I was sitting when I was sitting with John Morris, somebody who I played. He was like a mentor, a father figure to me when I first started playing cricket. John Morris, the England cricketer who played for Derbyshire, who played for Durham, and then went to Notts. And we're sitting in reception, I think it was, in the hotel when the message came through that Dickie Bird had died. And I was going back, and we were commenting and talking about. I said, John, we played in one of his last games at Eastbourne, and John can't remember. He had played a million games before that. And I went back through the scorecard, and yes, we had both played in the game. And I remember the game vividly, the fact that, I think I've told you the story a million times, that I'd bowled so many overs in the game, and the 12th man came in at the end of the game. And at the end of the day, when we had bowled 160 overs, I bowled 40, put the drinks down and went, thank God that's finished. And it was like, if I can get these boots off, I'm going to rip your head off because I've just bowled 40 overs on a flat one. And on that flat one, it was the umpires were Mike Harris, who died last year, Pasty Harris, and Mr. D. Bird. What a man. And I remember walking from fine leg as a 19-year-old, handing him my jumper and saying, there you go, Mr. Bird. I couldn't, another one, like David Boone, I couldn't look at him. He was so iconic in the game of cricket. And I couldn't believe I'm giving my jumper to Harold Dickie Bird. bowl me overs, take me jumper, and I appealed for an LBW and asked him why at the end of the over that he didn't give it. And he just nonchalantly looked at me and he went, Harmy, he says, I couldn't believe you got it straight. And that was Dickie. And that was Dickie. He was like, sorry, I couldn't believe you got it straight. And I thought, I'll take that off him. I really would. At the end of the game, I think we give him a guard of honour off. I think it was at Eastbourne, guard of honour off. Michael Bevan played that game. David Boone played that game. Some big players. Chris Adams was on that side. And I can tell my grandkids, because we talk about iconic figures. We talk about the likes of Shane Warne, Sir Garfield Sobers, Don Bradman, and all these players who in 100 years' time we'll still be talking about. And when you're talking about umpires and custodians of the game and people that made the game flow, in 100 years' time we'll be still telling stories about Dickie Bird. And I can tell my grandkids that I played in a game of cricket, give him my jumper as a 19-year-old, and he didn't give me an LBW because he told me that he couldn't believe I'd bowled it straight. That was Dickie Bird. What a man. What a character. And he will be sadly missed, not just by Yorkshire, but by, I think, the whole cricket family.